And it's like, oh my god, why is the sofa trying to kill me? Hi and welcome back to my booktube channel. My name is Sam and today we are on episode 3 of Trilogy Talk, which is a series that you don't have to watch in order, but basically I read all the unread trilogies on my bookshelves that are plaguing me, and today I wanted to tackle the Remembrance of Earth trilogy by Shinxin Liu. This is a Chinese translated science fiction trilogy, and this was heavily recommended to me by my friend from Museum Got Reads, Elizabeth, and basically I would always send her Instagram reels being like, oh, what if we found aliens and they look just like us? What about if aliens are really out there but they're just scared, and all these kind of different reels, and I would keep sending them to Elizabeth and she would just be like, that's the plot of Three Body Problem. You should read Three Body Problem. Why don't you just read Three Body Problem? And I finally did. And I'm excited to talk to you about it now. If you don't know, this trilogy is basically, I don't know how to say this because the plot is very science heavy and very like specific, and I don't quite know how to sum up the series, but basically Earth gets in contact with another civilization called the Trisolarans, and things aren't necessarily how you would expect them to turn out. It's very hard to describe unless you've read the books, but it's a really good sci-fi trilogy is what I would say. It's very science heavy, so if you're not really into kind of the science part of science fiction like I normally find myself to be, then this might not be for you, but I would say give it a go anyway. The second two books are brilliant, like top tier sci-fi in my opinion. The first book is very hard to get into, and honestly it was hard for me to get into, but yeah, it follows Earth exploring the universe and finding out why or where life is out there. So yeah, there's gonna be spoilers in this video, but that was my quick non-spoiler part of basically I just really enjoyed this trilogy. It was amazing. I specifically adored the second two books, some of my favorite sci-fi now, but the first book is very hard to get into and probably not one that I would ever go back to. If I was to reread this trilogy, I would read the second two books. But yeah, they're my overall non-spoilery thoughts, so let's just dive into the spoilery discussion of this trilogy. If you've only read one of these books or a couple of them, watch those sections please, and come back when you've finished the trilogy. Or if you read the whole trilogy, let's get into the discussion. If you haven't and you're just here for spoilers, I respect that for the spoilers, or if you can't be bothered to read it, then let's get into this. I'm gonna put these down, my arm hurts, but basically I have my notes here, and I have a lot of notes on the series, so I'm just going to talk through these, and yeah, let's get into the first book. Okay, so the first book is The Three Body Problem. Now this is probably recently well known by the Netflix adaptation, which I'm very excited to get to, but I wanted to film this before I muddled things up. Now this, as I said, is the hardest one to get into. It was very science heavy, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't understand 70% of this book, I would say. It was 30% at the end where, spoilers, the aliens we kind of see from their perspective and their society and how they work in this whole situation, and that part re-grasped me because initially I was kind of waning off. I was like, maybe I should DNF this, maybe I should give up on this trilogy. Elizabeth, you led me wrong, like how dare you. But then I got to that part with the aliens, I persevered through, and it was so worth it. And yeah, so good. I really liked the alien perspective. We'll get into that in a minute. Let's talk about the first part first. So the first part is basically, we start in kind of a historical setting of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, I would like to say, but it's basically the masses against science and like all these theoretical scientific positions. Like you've got education, people are being like brutally murdered, and stuff like that, and that kind of sets the stage for what this trilogy will explore, which is the kind of mistrust in science. And the historical elements of the Chinese stuff were really interesting to learn about. It's not a thing that I've ever read about before, I don't think so. Yeah, it was really cool seeing that kind of history of China within this science fiction book, and I do kind of hope there's a little bit more in the trilogy. That would be really cool. But yeah, but here it was good. It set the stage really well. And we see this particular woman, I can't remember her name, but her father is murdered on stage, and as revenge, she's just like, I hate society, I'm gonna tell the Trisolarans where we are. And that's how the Trisolarans find out where we are, out of just revenge for murdering this woman's father in front of her. And I just think that's so funny because she just does not care. She's like, yeah, I'm just gonna tell him. I don't care about all you lot. You need to kill my dad. That's how the Earth gets into the situation it gets into later. And I just find that it's like such a small act in regard to what happens later. And I don't know, I thought that was really funny. Well, really depressing, I guess, but also really funny. But yeah, and then we move on to kind of the modern day, and it gets very science heavy. There's this kind of VR world, this meta world, where you kind of talk to historical figures like Aristotle and Einstein and all these people about high science topics, and that's where I got lost. I was like, I have no clue what is going on. All I know is you're talking to these historical figures about science concepts. That's all I could understand. And I just kind of just went with the flow. I was like, okay, I'll just keep reading. Hopefully I'll understand like the basics at least. And yeah, that is the very hard part to get through. And honestly, it probably could have been cut, but I think that would have undercut the kind of message of this book of like, you need to just trust science, like stop mistrusting science. And yeah, that leads me into my next point, is like, I love how Liu kind of plays on this inherent mistrust in science and science theory within our society ourselves. Like, there's this really, especially in America, is a lot of my examples here are from American people and things I've seen online from America. But there's this inherent mistrust in science and scientific foundings. Like some examples are like, you got people that believe the earth is flat, you got people that believe the earth is hollow, the moon's fake, you got people that think vaccines give their children autism, you've got people that think there are actual aliens in Area 51 and want to raid it to kind of see who remembers the Area 51 raid. Like, that was a time, and I remember watching a video and no one showed up. It was so funny. But there was like this whole thing about Area 51 and people thinking there's aliens there, and like the Roswell incident and stuff like this, where there's just this mistrust in, I guess, the government, but as well in science. Like, you've got this heavy hatred of NASA from certain groups of people in America, where they just don't trust NASA and they think NASA is the worst and they're lying. It's like, why? Why do you just not believe in science? Like, make it make sense, please. I just thought it was so interesting that Liu comments upon this mistrust in science, and he plays it onto this kind of science fiction background and aliens, and he uses this as a defining feature of why we are in trouble when the Trisolarans come for us. And I think that's so interesting. Okay, I'm rambling because it's been a while since I read this specific book, so I don't really have much to say plot-wise because I can't remember. It was just a lot of science. But yeah, I really like the overall themes of the mistrust in science being used against us, because the aliens, when they come, the Trisolarans, they come and they're on their way. They've got 400 years to get here, which I think is another interesting point, that it's not an immediate kind of invasion. Like, they don't just hyperspace into our atmosphere. Oh my god, they're attacking right now. Like, it's an impending threat that our future generations are going to face, and it's this kind of thing that's going to linger over humanity as a whole for centuries, but it is coming and it is going to be a big issue because it's an alien invasion. I thought that was really cool that it wasn't immediate, it's like a lingering threat. And I was really interested at the part. I was like, oh, we're gonna get some time jumps. Like, I was so excited to see time jumps, and what Liu saw the future being. Oh my god, I keep rambling. What was I on about before that? I can't remember. But the aliens, yeah, I really like the alien civilization, about the whole Trisolaran planet, and it had 3 suns, which is the 3-body problem, was the 3 suns. And the problem was that they getting completely wiped out every 1,000 or so years, because as the suns rotated, as the planet rotated around the different suns, if it got closer to one, the whole planet would kind of be scorched and burned, and anyone that was alive would get died. Or they'd have times where they got frozen for a while, or they'd have eras of peace where everything was great and everything was in the perfect area, and then they'd get wiped out again. And it was this whole issue of the 3-body problem of like, we can't do anything about the suns, so they decide once they get to this specific scientific advantage of being able to go out in space, they're just like, let's just go find a new planet. They find Earth with its 1 sun, and like, that's perfect, we'll have that, we're gonna come and get that from you. And yeah, that whole kind of backstory around them, it really legitimizes them, I think, rather than just wanting to kill humans, just wanting to destroy the Earth or steal our resources. No, it's kind of more like a last-ditch effort of like a civilization wanting to survive in the universe. And they do really play on the, we're not evil, we just want to live. And I guess, I mean, it's inherently evil to kill other creatures just because you want their stuff, but still I understand where it was coming from, and I understand where they would come from. And also their society itself as a specific society was really interesting. They have no concept of things like lies, because basically they don't have a hive mind, but it's kind of similar to a hive mind where all their thoughts are just visible to anyone. Like it's like they had like a board above their head and it just says what they're thinking, and so they can't lie, and they can see what each other's thinking, what each other's feeling, and that was very interesting. And that's going to play definitely more into the trilogy as a whole, of like this not being able to lie. So how do we use that against them, or how do they use that against us? That would be very interesting to see. And there's also some hints at cannibalism as well within their society. There's an alien that kind of rebels a little bit, and he tries to kind of help Earth a little bit when its location is discovered. And they it kind of seems like they're going to eat him, and it's like, oh, whoops, you probably should have helped us, but thank you. But yeah, overall, they're my thoughts on book one. Let's get into The Dark Forest, which I have much more notes for and much more love for as well. But yeah, if you don't want spoilers for Dark Forest, click off now and come back later. But if not, let's continue on. Okay, so The Dark Forest is where it all kicks off, and is specifically where I really got into this trilogy. But this felt so cinematic. It felt like an entire history had passed, because we do get the time jumps that I mentioned in the previous one, and we do see the future, but we see so much of it that it just felt like I was experiencing time with the characters. And we start in the modern day and we jump to the future, and then we jump to a bit more of the future, and it just felt like seeing the entire world just progress in such specific ways. Like it was very distinguished, is what I meant to say. Very distinguished ways how it's adapted. It really made it feel so evocatively real and just vividly interesting, of like all the different changes, but we'll get into that in a moment. So the initial prologue of this book, I just wanted to mention, is so cool. So we kind of see a split perspective from an ant that's just trying to find its way around, and a guy that's kind of lost his way in life. He doesn't really know what to do, and he has a discussion with someone else, and we kind of get a parallel between the two, of like the man as a representative of humanity as a whole, and the ant as a representation for humanity as a whole. And basically the ant is finding its way around the environment that it's in, but obviously it has no sense of what is around it. Like there's a mention there's a big spider, but the ant knows nothing about it because it can't see it. It's just trying to find its way in the universe. Basically the ant is humanity looking around in space, and the human kind of reflects that, because he starts talking about space sociology or something like that, where like the sociology of space. But yeah, it was very interesting comparison of humanity and ants, and how we are this small tiny thing in the universe, that's so unaware of anything around us, even if it might be blatant, like there's a giant spider. Why can't you see it? Because we're just so small and we can't see it. I just really love that parallel. I don't know if I did it justice in that explanation, but you've read it, you understand. But yeah, I just thought that was so cool. So sorry, I'm looking down at my notes. There was a particular line that I picked out. Now I do this a lot, and I was looking through my notes and I was like, okay, they're not as cool without the context of the book. But hopefully I'm jogging your memory of them and you remember the context. But there was a line specifically that said, when you know where you are, the world becomes limited. And that kind of relates to the ant thing. But like, that is so interesting. When you know where you are, the world becomes limited, because there's nothing left undiscovered. There's nothing left up to the imagination of, like, it's kind of that mysticism from life and just exploring that has been taken away from us, because we now live on every part, well, nearly every part of the planet, or we've seen every part of the planet bar the oceans. So it's kind of that mysticism and that excitement of joy and exploring has now been kind of extradited into space, which may not be a good idea from what we see in here. But yeah, I just really love that line. So I really enjoyed that section as a whole. So this comes from a section where a man meets a woman, and she's a writer, and he doesn't really understand what she kind of finds in literature. So she tells him that for her birthday, she wants him to write her a book so that he can understand what creating something can feel like. And he does. He writes a book about the most ideal woman, which, okay, interesting birthday present for your fiance or whatever, but okay, so he writes about the ideal woman, and he becomes so infatuated with this fake persona that he has created, that she becomes real to him. And he ends up leaving his wife for her. So there's that. That was really interesting, and it was set back in modern-ish day Earth. It's kind of hard to distinguish modern and future in this one because a lot of it is in the future. So every time I say modern day, I feel like I'm referring to the future. Anyway, but there's that, and basically this man is called Luo Ji, and he is our main character, and I love Luo Ji. Like, he is not the best of people all the time, but I just found him to be so fascinating, and his appearances throughout the trilogy, I was here for them. Especially by the end of this book, I just found him so fascinating as a character. So basically we see this progression, and he becomes more involved with the government scheme of like, how are you gonna deal with the Trisolarans? Like, they're coming. So the initial kind of stages of figuring out what to do about the Trisolarans, we see Luo Ji become a wall facer, which is hard to explain, so I'm not going to. But basically the government set up these wall facers, and their kind of mission is to be as mysterious as possible so that the Trisolarans, because the Trisolarans, I forgot to mention, have these things called sophons, where they can see everything that is happening on Earth. They hear everything we say, they know everything we do. So basically these wall facers have to be as mysterious as possible whilst creating a plan to kind of defeat the Trisolarans. And we get these, I think there's 5 of them, and they come up with different plans, but Luo Ji is just not interested. He is not interested. He wants this fake ideal woman to be real. Like, she could be, the imagination of her comes real, but he wants like the real deal. So he gets his position as a wall facer, and he's like, I don't care, and he uses all this infinite money the government give him to kind of make this defense protocol, and he's just like, yep, build me a really lovely house in a really nice part of nature. I need these specific things. I want mountains, I want a lake, I want a moor and stuff like this. And he basically makes them build him a house and it's just like, yeah, this is definitely part of saving the earth. Definitely. And everyone's like so shocked. They're like, oh my god, he's so mysterious, like I just can't figure out what he's doing. And it's because he has no plan. And then he makes them find a real version of this imaginary ideal woman that he made, and they actually find her, which I thought was kind of random, but that was thrown in there, and they end up falling in love as a kid with her, and that gets used against him. Now this is where we get sent into the future. Now this happens a good chunk into the book, but not too far in, so we get plenty of future stuff, and I'm so excited to talk about the future. I hope you're keeping along. I'm rambling a lot. They find this fictional woman for him, they have a kid, fall in love, and then the government kind of creates the hibernation, so freezing yourself and then go into the future. And basically they force Luo Ji to hibernate and go into the future to help save the world. And they're like, your family is now in hibernation, you've got to as well if you want to see them. This whole situation kind of culminates in us finding out that the aliens see Luo Ji specifically as a huge threat, because unlike the other ones where they're kind of like, they're building this fleet of spaceships to just send up and attack, or they're planning to, I can't remember the other plans, but they understand what those people are doing. They find it so easy to figure out. But with Luo Ji, they're like, okay, what is this human doing? Like, we really don't understand. So they are constantly sending assassins after Luo Ji. And it doesn't help that there's now a cult of humans on Earth that kind of worship the Trisolarans, which is so annoying. Like, why are you praying for our death? Okay, like, come on, guys. Root for your home team, like, we want to survive. So there's a cult those, and basically they want to kill Luo Ji. Oh, okay, Luo Ji does get a plan. When his family is hibernated, he does come up with a plan, and basically he casts a spell on a star in the system, and it doesn't do anything until later on. It doesn't do anything, he just casts a spell on this random planet, nothing happens. That's why they kind of give up on him. Okay, so when he wakes up from hibernation, we've jumped 205 years into the future, and it's very much felt like Interstellar, where well, I'm not going to spoil Interstellar for you. And there was very much some really cool world building off the bat. He wakes up in the hospital and it's all really advanced. Like, they say, why would electricity run out? And because he can't find batteries, he can't find cables, everything kind of just runs on the electricity that is collected within the walls and within surfaces. So you can just like touch a wall and a screen will appear, and you can do your iPad rubbish on that, or you can turn a lamp on just by touching it. Like, it's, I mean, we have that now, but that kind of stuff of like electricity is electricity is just everywhere. You just use it. We learn that now the whole of humanity lives underground because they feared that if the Trisolarans attacked the Earth, they'd wipe out the surface of the Earth. So all the humans go and live underground in these giant structures that are shaped like trees, which was very interesting. It was very much the Dark Forest kind of initially being planted in there of like, are we the Dark Forest? Like, what is the Dark Forest? So we have all these giant trees underground. They're not actual trees, but they just shape like trees. And that was really interesting and really cool to imagine, like all these big trees and all the buildings hanging off the leaves. It was so good. I'm just a little nerd. I'm a little nerd for that stuff. I love world building. So all the cities are underground. There's a projection of the sky on to the ceiling, so it doesn't feel like you're underground. And yeah, it was really cool. And there's another line that I really liked, which is again taken out of context. But it's the past was really a dream, and I just that hit me. That hit me because it kind of the equation between past and dream is just very interesting. I'm an English student, I'm sorry. I just thought that was really cool. We learned a bit more about the world after that. We learned that Europe became one big country. We learned that Canada split into two based on kind of the French speaking and the English speaking. And we learned that there are no more superpowers. The Earth is split between two kind of situations. There's the there's the Terrain International and there's the Fleet International. Now, the Fleet International is kind of all these space stations and these space fleets that were made and kind of made together with everyone from the Earth. So it's not like country based, it was made by everyone. But then when they're in space, they become their own kind of government, their own kind of continent as well. So they kind of get self-recognition as a state for themselves as well, which is very interesting. Kind of that split between humans in Earth and humans on Earth. And in spaceships, but not on Earth. Sorry, I'm losing my ability to speak. I thought that was so cool. And this whole situation, like, we get more than this. This is just the first future we see. And just the world building was incredible. I absolutely adored it. And I think this is why I love these books too much. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's get back into the plot. Okay, now I've rambled about the world building for a bit. Let's get back to Luoji. So he wakes up in this kind of hospital. They woken him up from hibernation, and it's kind of a standard procedure. At his time when he was frozen, it was very new kind of technology, but now it seems that, it's just an everyday thing. They just have people that wake you up and deal with you like that, like it was just a treatment. So that was interesting as well. But he wakes up and he basically finds out that everyone forgot about the wall faces. Like, it was a failed project from humanity, and in the future they're like, why were we so dumb back then? Like, what was the point in that? And it was seen as a complete failure because all the missions, we get like a recounting of what happened to each specific mission that goes on for a little bit too long, I would say. But it describes how all the missions were basically stupid and didn't work and just failed ultimately. And apart from Luoji, who no one really knew what he was up to, he just cast a random spell. Which I'll get back to in a minute. But it was basically the wall faces was seen as a huge failure. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes. And then Luoji is released into this future, and he just has to find his way around, find his new purpose in life. He still hasn't got his family with him. They won't give him them for some reason, I can't remember. But we kind of start to see these events happen to Luoji, and they seem very much intent to kill him. So we see a manhole cover open up in front of him, which is something now in this future that never happens. They have no precedent of this happening before, of like people just dying in manholes like we would today. Like, it's so advanced, they don't have that anymore. But for some reason, it nearly happened to Luoji. Then we see when he has the medication delivered, it's the wrong medication, and just before he takes it, he's stopped from taking it because it's actually poison or something like that. It's like really deadly hibernation medicine that would kill him without the pod around him to hibernate him. Science. And then the final straw that breaks the camel's back of like something is trying to kill you is this sofa, which in the future they kind of mold to you, so it's like a really comfy sofa, and it tries to strangle him, and it's like, oh my god, why is the sofa trying to kill me? And they basically find out there's this murder virus that's kind of this old technology used against people, and they thought they'd eradicated it, and obviously Luoji woke up and it was brought back because it was specifically coded to kill him. So all these instances were kind of technology attacking Luoji, which I found really interesting, of like this idea that the world has become so technology advanced that now these computer viruses now can specifically target people. And I know it was like intended, it had intent behind it from actual people that coded it to kill him, but I just found it so interesting that the world becomes more deadly the more technology advanced it becomes. So Luoji is sent to the surface to kind of outlive the virus. They have to take it out, but he's on the surface for a bit and he sees like all the old what's left of the world. Then we get some brief cutaways I haven't mentioned until now, but we get some brief cutaways to this ship captain who's called Jungba Hai, and he is on a ship. He's a ship captain, and he ends up running away from the Earth with a bunch of seeds of humanity, and he basically wants that to be a way of humanity surviving if the Earth is destroyed or lost to the aliens. But at this time, there's this kind of real like demonization of those that want to escape. I think it was called escapism or existentialism. There was like a specific thing for it, but basically anyone that didn't have faith that the Earth would survive or try to do anything but save the Earth, like they tried to flee into space, they were villainized and they were seen like traitors and they were punished for that. And that was a very heavy theme in this book as well, of like we need to protect the actual Earth and everyone on it. We can't just escape and leave a bunch of people behind. So that I thought that was really interesting. He comes up later on, Jungba Hai. Then we have another huge event, which is a probe from the Trisolarans finally reaches Earth ahead of the fleet, which is still about 200 years away, but this kind of probe gets here early, and it's very mysterious. It's this weird, sleek, metal teardrop kind of thing, and it's just sitting there. So we send all our spaceships to go check it out because everyone wants the glory of discovering what it is first. And initially I was thinking maybe it's an escape pod, maybe something bigger came for the Trisolarans, and this is going to open up and it's going to have one of them in, and it's going to be like, guys, I'm so sorry, there's a bigger threat. That would have been a dumb twist. I'm glad I didn't write this book, but I thought that's what it would be. But then the pod goes Super Saiyan. It just kills everyone. It just becomes so powerful and it zooms in and out and it destroys all these ships. And like I said, Jungba Hai is the only one. I think there's 2 ships that escape and he's one of them. And it destroys the entirety of the Earth's fleet. So we spend another 100 years trying to build that up again. But that was so crazy, that whole moment. Like, I mean, it was kind of expected. They are our enemy, but like just the utter kind of devastation it causes with such a small, seemingly harmless device, just wipes out everything we had. That was crazy. Then we kind of find out a bit more about the spell that Luoji cast back in the modern day of his thing. That kind of comes back. Everyone is distraught from the fleet being destroyed, and they need someone else to look up to. So they look back on Luoji and they found out the planet that he had set a spell on was gone. It was destroyed. It wasn't there anymore. And they're like, what did you do to do this? And he's basically explains, which kind of now introduces the Dark Forest theory, that he kind of revealed the location of this star and this system, and that it was destroyed by something bigger in the universe. Something bigger destroyed this planet out of the threat that it might have life on it. And that was so cool. That was so crazy. And it wasn't a spell. He just revealed the location. So now he's kind of being considered for Mundicide, I think it was called, where he basically could have killed an entire planet of people. They can't prove there were people on it, but they kind of like, how did you know there wasn't people on it? You might have just killed an entire planet. So they kind of villainize Luoji for a bit, but then he kind of becomes revered. So the Dark Forest theory is basically aliens and other life in the universe doesn't expose where it is because there's a threat that another life form might see us or see them and just destroy you because you could be a threat. So the reason we don't know if there's anything out there is because anything out there might think we're a threat. I don't know, it's really hard to explain, but basically it's basically about the unknown threat. So basically, if a civilization saw Earth, they wouldn't know, even if we said we were peaceful, they wouldn't know if we were telling the truth. They don't want to risk the threat that we would take them out, or we would destroy their planet, or we would cause harm to them. So they make the action to immediately destroy us. And that's kind of what happened to the Luoji's star that he got destroyed. And yeah, that's a Dark Forest theory. It's like no one wants to present themselves in the universe because there could be a bigger threat out there, and we do learn that there is a bigger threat now because that planet Luoji revealed is now destroyed, and he uses this is the end of the book, he uses this against the Trisolarans, and he is like, hey, back off, or I'm going to reveal Trisolaris's location and Earth's sun's location, and we'll all die. So you can either have us all die, or you can just back off and leave us alone for a bit. And the Trisolarans are like, okay, we kind of don't want to die, so we'll hold off, but we're only going to hold off as long as you have kind of the hostage situation. Basically, he has loads of bombs around the sun, and he's like, if I kill myself, the sun's going to explode and reveal the location of our two planets. And they're like, oh, okay, we respect you, Luoji. And they have this grudging respect for Luoji, which I love. And he kind of proves himself again, but he kind of fades back into kind of obscurity again when humanity kind of starts to work with Trisolarans for the time being, because it's seemingly a standstill. They're at like a truce because the Trisolarans don't want their planet to be destroyed, or this new planet to be destroyed, and obviously Earth doesn't want to be destroyed. But the Trisolarans don't know that, because Luoji could do anything. So Luoji kind of becomes this myth, this legend, and this position where as long as he's alive, the Earth is safe. And that is how the book ends, basically. Okay, we need to move on to the next book because this video is really long. I'm sorry, I'll try not to ramble on the next one, but I love this book so much. The Dark Forest was incredible. I probably didn't do it justice, so if you're watching this with spoilers, you may as well still read it. It's still really cool. You'll get a lot more out of it from actually reading it. If you did read it, did I do a good job explaining this? If you want to elaborate on anything I've said, or give me any more kind of cool quotes or anything, or your thoughts on what happened, then leave it in the comments. Let's get on to the third book, Death's End. Now, this book had my entire heart. It made me want to have an affair with the Dark Forest, for which one was my favourite. I was so enthralled by this book. It was so like I was at awe with it because there was so much happening. If I was to sum it up in like one sentence, it'd be that Liu didn't know what ending to pick, so he wrote all of them, because so much happens in this book, and I can't wait to get into this. I've done this once already. It was 41 minutes long. Let's try and re-record that and make it a little bit shorter. So let's dive straight in. So initially we go back into the historical roots of Liu's writing. Previously we had seen obviously the Chinese Revolution or something surrounding that, with academia, but this one we saw magic, and we learned that magic in Liu's world was real for a moment because there was some kind of space event happening which allowed magical occurrences to happen. And for this one we see a woman who's able to remove a guy's brain without breaking the bone, and this is at the time of Constantinople's invasion, and the king of Constantinople is like, hey, go do this to the leader of the invasion, but obviously by the time she goes and tries to do it, magic is gone, the space event is finished, and she can no longer do it, and she's executed. And that's kind of the whole story of that. I don't really know what the relevance was for the ending as a whole, because I don't know, we don't really deal with magic in this book, so I don't really know why that was necessary, but it was interesting nonetheless, and I thought it was a cool idea that magic was real for a certain moment, and it kind of leans into that idea that Liu didn't know where he was going 100%, so he kind of just put everything he wanted in here, because I feel like that maybe was something that he would have expanded on, or maybe I'm just too dumb to kind of realize what relevance that had. But I liked it. It was interesting. And then after that, so I've broken this book up into 5 main stages. So the first one I've entitled Brain Guy. Now, Elizabeth has informed me that the people that have watched the show have a fascination with this brain guy who is called, let me check my notes, who's called Tiang Ming, and he's brain guy to the audience, which will come apparent in a minute. But we are introduced to him, and he is living in the crisis eras, which is before all the future stuff in the previous book. So we've kind of gone back in time, and this is the crisis era of where they've realized the Trisolarans are coming, everything is crazy, they don't know what they're doing, and it's a crisis. And we see that some different laws had passed, and one specifically was the legalization of euthanasia, and he is very much in this kind of idea that he wants to be euthanized because he has a brain tumor, I think it is, or incurable cancer, and he is going to die either way. But before he dies, he decides he's going to spend his fortune, because he's a rich man, he decides to spend his fortune on buying a star for this woman that he had known when they were both in university, and it's kind of sweet. He just wants to do a nice gesture. I think it would be a bit weird if you were the woman and you got a star and you were like, okay, what? But yeah, he does that, and then just as he's about to die, this woman, Jeong Sheen, comes bursting in and is like, wait, don't kill him. And it turns out that this whole euthanasia legalization was part of her plan. She's working with a government kind of organization called PIA, and they're trying to work on sending a representative of Earth, aka a spy, to the Trisolarian fleet. And this whole euthanasia program was basically to find someone that was willing to die, but still had the right academic background. And obviously she knows him from academia, and it was kind of the perfect route. She didn't know that he was going to be the one that they chose, but it was a coincidence. And it's kind of this kind of cute little love story throughout the book, but basically the PIA's plan is to send a spy or a ambassador to the Trisolarians to try and gather information, and hopefully through the Trisolarian technology that person can send the information back. It's kind of a wishy-washy plan. They don't have 100% certainty on it, but they keep hitting setbacks within their government kind of funding and the spatial technology they have. They keep hitting weight limits, everything they want to send. Initially they want to send a body, but it's too heavy, so they think, okay, we'll send a corpse, a frozen corpse, and hope the Trisolarians can reanimate it, but that ends up being too heavy. So they finally decide on sending the brain, and hence the brain guy. So what's his name, Tian Ming, is the brain dude, and they basically want to use his brain and they want to send it up in a little capsule so he can spy. But tragedy strikes, because when they do eventually send him up, he gets hit off course and ends up going off into the Milky Way, never to be seen again. And in 5 million years, he will no longer even be able to see the Milky Way. And that was so tragic, and that's why kind of the way the brain guy starts within this book. We'll get back to him a little bit later on. There was some really interesting imagery drawn between the horrors that this plan could entail. So we get, I think it was Tian Ming was theorizing this, but he was thinking very much like if he did make it Trisolarians and they did experiments on him, they would probably find emotion and human emotion most interesting, because obviously that is not a facet their civilization has due to all the brain reading and stuff. So he theorized that they would be most interested in emotions, and more specifically pain. So he theorized that if he was captured, then they would just put him through constant pain. And there was this, Leo drew this really horrific imagery of just someone in constant agony being tortured over and over again, whether it be scientific or entertainment purposes for these Trisolarians. And that was just one of the most horrific things ever, just imagining someone in that much pain consistently forever. But then another conclusion that he draws is that if he doesn't make it to the Trisolarians and he ends up in space, he is literally going to be conscious in space, alone, with no one to talk to, no one to help. He's just going to be floating indefinitely through space, alone, cold vacuum, nothing to look at. And that would just be the loneliest, most horrible existence as well. So it's like both sides of this kind of struggle are very, very scary. And I just love that kind of discussion of the doom of this whole situation. And it made the plan feel very much like it was supposed to. Like, it was supposed to feel like a last-ditch effort in this crisis era. They're trying to find any way to kind of defeat the Trisolarians, or learn stuff about the Trisolarians to defeat them, and I thought that was brilliant. There was an interesting quote. I'm going to pull some more quotes out in this section, and it was, if hibernation was possible, why would you linger in the present? And I thought that was a really cool discussion. I think Leo does this really well, is he'll take a scientific technology from science fiction, and he will really explore and kind of dissect the ramifications of this technology, rather than in previous sci-fi books you get like Star Wars, they have hyperspace, or in other books they have cryosleep, and it's kind of just a device for the plot. But within Leo's work, he kind of explores the actual ramifications and how that would affect human psyche and the human body as well, and how it would affect the populace as a whole. And this whole idea that if hibernation is possible, what's stopping us from just going to sleep and hoping things get better in the future? Why should we do the work now when we could wait and hope someone else does it? And I thought that was really interesting. I'm not going to go too much into that, but I really like Liu's dissection of these technologies. So anyway, Tiangming gets sent off as a brain into space, and that's kind of left for a moment, and we see Jiang Xin, who is the woman obviously in the PIA. She becomes our main character, and she is sent to the future through hibernation as kind of an ambassador for this plan, to kind of have someone on the other end in the future to represent this plan and see where it goes. Again, say similar with Leoji in the previous book, we learned that this whole mission was a complete failure and a waste of time, which is, again, funny. But she gets into the future and she's woken up for different reasons. She obviously thinks she's been woken up for this plan, but instead the people of the future want to buy the star that that Tiangming had gifted her, because they found out that the star actually had planets that were Earth-like and could potentially be somewhere that the people of Earth to escape to. So they want to buy the whole star off of her. And she makes the very clever decision of selling the planets that they had, but keeping the sun, which essentially means that she can use the sun. I don't think it was not intentionally used to make money. She just kind of had sentiment towards the sun, but she very smartly keeps the sun and then gets an assistant called AA, and they become millionaires because she is able to sell the energy from this star to fuel the planets that she'd sold. So basically she made herself a whole kind of company. I keep forgetting words. She made herself this whole company and became a millionaire, and I thought it was just so clever, and I really like that for her. She's very cool. So we have a new character called AA, who is basically her assistant and her kind of companion within the future, explaining what has happened and where she is. The next stage we see in this future situation is we actually see Leoji again, and he has now been titled this sword catcher position, which is basically the person that has the power to reveal Earth and Trisolarans' location with the Trisolaran threat, which was what was keeping the Trisolarans away. And now Leoji is not in the best light with this current part of civilization. They are accusing him of mundicide because they now have the view that by revealing that previous planet's position in the previous book that got destroyed, he could have potentially killed an entire civilization or a species of race, because no one can tell if there was life on that planet, and now it's too late to kind of figure that out, so they're just assuming that he committed mundicide, which is murdering an entire planet. So poor Leoji is not in the best light at this situation, and he has to pass on his position as this sword catcher, holding the threat, keeping the Trisolarans away. And now the population of the Earth kind of has got too comfortable. They kind of believe that this truce with the Trisolarans has kind of weakened the Trisolarans, and now they actually are friends. So they want someone with more compassion and more kind of resistance to actually doing the threat, to be in control of this self-detonation system. Anyway, so they pick Jiang Xin. And immediately as Leoji leaves the building, the Trisolarans, who had only respected him, are just like, yep, it's time to invade. Leoji's gone, let's go invade. And there's a 10-minute warning for Jiang Xin to actually press the button and release the location of Earth and Trisolaris, but she can't do it. And that was she was chosen specifically because people hoped she wouldn't press it. And she does exactly that. She can't press the button to reveal the locations, and Trisolaran invades. And this is our second part. I think I've already announced that, the sword catcher and the Trisolaran. And this is our second part. And we get a whole kind of an invasion story with the Trisolarans coming straight down. Everyone's regretting their decisions, rightfully so. And we see the Trisolarans kind of take over Earth. And this is only in the middle of the book. And this was one of the points where I was like, I felt like this was going to be like an end game part of the book. I thought this was going to be an end to the story, but no, it's just kind of a part within the book. It's the middle section, which I thought was crazy. So the Trisolarans invade, and they very much dominate humanity. They send everyone to Australia, which I guess is better than killing us all, but it could be debated. But they sent everyone to Australia, and anyone that does not get to Australia within the allotted time will be killed, and then the Trisolarans kind of take over the rest of the Earth. And Australia is basically a reservation, similar to what happened with the colonizers and the Native Americans. If they get shoved into reservations and then slowly killed off. And that's what happened to Earth. They kind of have no government system, because all these world governments like the UK, the US are trying to operate from different cities within Australia, but Australia itself is also self-governing itself. So there's kind of this struggle between power and housing people. There's not enough space for these 4 billion people that have been sent to Australia. There's no food, there's no electricity, they're not allowed weapons. And yeah, it is dire states. And there's a really chilling line later on within this plot. They've run out of food, people are starving, and they beg the Trisolarians. They're like, hey, we need food. Can you please help us out? And the Trisolarians are like, you are surrounded by food. Excuse me? So basically the Trisolarians want us to eat each other and kill each other, and their whole plan is just for us to slowly kill ourselves so they don't feel bad for killing us. And they even employ people within humanity and like, hey, if you work with us and keep other humans in line, then you might be able to come live back in your old homes, in your old continents, in your old countries. So they even turn us against each other, and this whole thing of like slowly trying to wipe us out without actually having the blood on their hands. And it's awful and it's terrible. And I thought the stakes were so well done because I felt so much, and it was just so dire. And I love this whole kind of world building as well, of this very expansive kind of in-depth analysis of an invasion and what would happen if this stronger power did invade and wasn't necessarily the typical movie trope of just wanting to destroy us, but just wanting our resources and not really wanting to kill us themselves. I thought that was a very interesting route to go rather than the kind of just kill everyone route. So that whole section was crazy. And ultimately, this comes around a discussion of the inherent belief that humanity has a right to survive. And Liu kind of examines that within this section of like, why do we believe we should survive when other species such as dinosaurs and such, they're dead, they're gone. Dinosaurs are gone, that entire species. So why do we as a species believe that we have more right than them to last forever? Why do we not accept that there will be a time when humanity is done? And that comes throughout the rest of the book as well, but that's very prevalent within this section itself, is like that inherent belief of our survival and our right to survival, and the kind of selfishness of that. And that comes back at the very end, so hopefully I'll remember to talk about that. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting discussion. Okay, so my third kind of section of this book is the Earth kind of getting rid of the Trisolarians, and then the kind of questioning of science again, which is so infuriating, but we'll get there. So we kind of move away from the Australia section for a moment, and we head back into space, where there's this ship called Gravity, and it was initially on a mission because obviously the Trisolarians and the humans were working together until recently. And basically they were heading off to do something. I can't 100%. I think they were chasing another ship, the seed ship in the previous book. I can't remember. But they had a soap-on teardrop kind of, what is the word? Escort. With them, and as soon as the Trisolarians invaded, this escort, this soap-on, got the word, and it was like, okay, time to destroy the Gravity. But the Gravity manages to escape, and they set off the Dark Forest deterrent themselves and reveal the location of Earth and Trisolaris to the rest of the universe. And this kind of cascades back to Earth, where the Trisolarians are like, oh, for God's sake, you had one job so far. So the Trisolarians are like, we can't stay here anymore. Have your planet back. We are going. So that is how we defeat the Trisolarians, is the Gravity is able to set off the Dark Forest, where Jiangxin couldn't. They did. So that's how the Trisolarians are dealt with. Earth kind of spreads back out, back to Earth being fully Earth, not just Australia, and we kind of get a bit more world building about how they piece back humanity together. And that was very cool, but we kind of stick with Gravity for a bit longer. And we see them continue their journey into space. They decide they don't want to go back to Earth, they want to continue and just see what is out there and hope that they can maybe set up humanity somewhere else. Again, this comes back later. But within their travels, they find this kind of 4D bubble, so 4-dimensional space bubble. And within it, they find a bunch of ships, but everyone on these ships is dead. And luckily, the ships talk, and the ship says, I am a tomb. And basically, there's this really ominous threat of, again, this kind of larger threat within the Dark Forest, that something is collapsing dimensions. And we kind of get this hint that there was 10 dimensions, then 9 dimensions, and now we're on 3-dimensional space. And it's this very ominous countdown almost of like going from 10 to, or above 10 to what happens when we get to 0 dimensions, and will the Earth survive being in 2-dimensional? Is this whole kind of question. And these really ominous ships are just like, you need to find a new puddle, because there's kind of this idea that the universe is a lake that's been dried up by a bigger force, and these puddles are the last remaining specks. Obviously, this last 4-dimensional space is its own puddle. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but the tomb is basically very ominous and says you need to find somewhere else to go, because there's no way of escaping this dimensional collapse. So that was very ominous. And then from then on, the gravity just goes off on its business, and it's just like, okay, that was scary. So then back to Earth, we kind of we get questioning of science, and it's kind of this ingrained problem from the first book, where the Trisolarans attacked science and kind of made that ingrained mistrust in it. But now the people of Earth are like, is the Dark Forest threat even real? Like, we've got rid of the Trisolarans, we've won, we're fine, we're good. And they kind of deny the idea that there was this bigger threat all along. So there's the question of the Dark Forest theory. Leoji's name is dragged through the mud. I hate that. And it was so infuriating. I got so infuriated at this problem. But eventually we do get a confirmation that the Dark Forest was real, and they were all idiots, because Trisolaris is gone. It's destroyed. The planet of Trisolaris is gone. It was destroyed. So now the big threat is like, okay, so they've destroyed that, they're coming for us next, we need to figure out a plan. And then we finally end this kind of section that I've made with the brain guy getting found, and he sends back a message within these encrypted stories. He sends 3 main stories, which honestly were a part of the book where I got really bored, and I kind of skipped the last one because they were so long and so pointless, and I just didn't enjoy them. I don't like stories within books, I don't like dream sequences, I don't like that kind of stuff, because it always ends up being pointless. And I skipped the final one, and it didn't even matter, so obviously I proved my own point. But the first 2 were kind of like encrypted messages, and he is setting up a date with Tiangming, sorry. Is setting up a date with Jiangxin, and he's like, hey, I don't think we'll ever meet again, but if you do manage to get into space, then we should meet at your star. Which is very sweet. And then obviously he was like, the Trisolarans have figured out something else, and there's this whole bigger threat. And he's like, guys, you're in trouble, you need to do something. Okay, so now we are heading towards the latter end of the book, and we kind of see this 4th section that I made, which is Earth's reaction to this re-realization of the Dark Forest theory, and the plans to evade it. Now we start off this section with kind of a view of this alien species, which is, I think, named the Seeker, and it's basically the POV of this Dark Forest threat, this bigger threat than Earth. And we kind of see that this civilization has just, if we see you, we'll destroy you out of self-preservation. We do not want you to be a threat, so we'll just destroy you as soon as we find you. And that is the Seeker's role, and he just presses the button and destroys planets. He sends these photons into people's stars and people's planets to totally collapse them, and it's kind of crazy. And that's all we see from that, which I thought was perfect. I'm so glad we didn't get more kind of revelation around that, because I think it works better within the mystery, because the mystery kind of adds to the theory as well. But it was nice seeing from that, and kind of seeing the confirmation that there is a bigger threat behind the Dark Forest. So that was kind of crazy. But then we see the Earth's realization, and basically they are like, okay, there's something coming, and this is enforced through a false alarm. There's a big alarm that goes on. It's like there's a photon heading towards our sun. Earth is going to be destroyed. Everyone except that we're going to die. And everyone goes to panicking. They run to the spaceports, including Jiangxin and AA. They all rush to the spaceport to try and get their ships away. No one has light speed on their ships, and so it's kind of like pointless. And Jiangxin points this out. It's like, no one has light speed. We can't escape the sun exploding, but people are trying anyway, and I feel like I need to try anyway. Out of this like selfishness of self-preservation. So everyone is at the spaceport. People are killing each other. People are setting off ships whilst people are still surrounding their ships, and the people surrounding are getting burned up by the engines. It's horrific. Everyone is screaming. AA and Jiangxin find this school teacher with a class of school kids, and she's like, please take the children at least. You don't have to take the children. But Jiangxin's ship only has 3 extra seats, so AA comes up with this kind of brutal solution to this, and she's like, hey kids, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. The 3 people that get them right come with us. And it's like kind of brutal, like, but I understand they want the smartest people to survive, so she asks these questions to get the kids. They get on the ship and they go, and then it turns out it was a false alarm. So those kids are going to be traumatized for the rest of their lives, thinking that they didn't get the question right, and that caused their death. So that's kind of sad. But it was a false alarm. All these people had died for no reason. All these people had rushed into space for no reason. So it kind of, they all come back, and this is revealed where, and it is revealed that the bigger companies, the bigger corporations actually did have light-speed ships. And I wrote my notes in all capitals, a damn space capitalists, because they lied. They got these light speed ships for themselves so they could escape without sharing that technology with the population, and there was no intention of saving the masses. They wanted to save themselves. So it's this interesting discussion of capitalism within this future as well, which again illustrates Liu's interesting dynamics within this world of exploring different topics. I just love it so much. But yeah, damn space capitalists, they were going to leave us behind. So I really enjoyed that. So then we kind of have the plans for the future, and the two main plans are to A, build giant space cities and position them behind bigger planets like Jupiter and Saturn so that we can hide in case the sun explodes, and hopefully hope that these bigger planets take the brunt of the sun exploding, which I don't really see the logic behind that. But we kind of want to use the bigger planets as a shield. And then the other plan is to slow light speed down to kind of show the dark forest threat and other civilizations that we're not a threat. Look, we've slowed down light speed around us. Look, we've made it hard for us to escape, virtually impossible for us to escape the galaxy. We are not a threat to you, leave us alone. And the whole idea of lowering the light speed was kind of weird and crazy. But they ultimately decide to go with the space cities and hide behind big planets. So we see Jiangxin go in and out of hibernation as they are being created and constructed. And yeah, we go on to that. So yeah, then ultimately the Seeker does send a photon towards our sun, and the Earth is in imminent danger. We're on countdown again, but we have these space cities that everyone kind of feels safe. So they send, this is the 5th section, by the way, which I titled The End of the Galaxy, and the Remembrance of Earth. So Jiangxin and AA are sent to Pluto, which has kind of become, they've kind of colonized the galaxy now. All our planets within our solar system are ours. So Jiangxin and AA are sent to Pluto to meet Liuji, who is just chilling on Pluto alone, and he's 200 years old. I love Luoji. He is my favourite character in this trilogy. But that is just so wild. Luoji is a 200-year-old man who has lived through so much, and he's chilling on Pluto with the Mona Lisa. Like, I feel like I'm mad. Like, saying that out loud makes me feel mad. In like a crazy way, not in like a, oh, I'm angry way. But yeah, they are sent to Pluto to kind of collect some human artifacts, and this whole discussion of like, if the universe is destroyed, how are we going to leave a mark behind? And there's this idea that digital stuff, paper stuff, artifacts are all going to get destroyed by time, and the only way to kind of leave our mark as humanity is to carve stuff into stone and hope that survives, because that's the only thing that kind of tests the test of time, and hope someone digs it up and finds it. So that is what they've been doing on Pluto, is carving these giant messages and trying to get the most important parts of humanity carved onto the rock, to kind of hope that we can persevere even if the people now die, which was interesting. And there was a fantastic quote that I want to read out just now. This is my favourite quote of the entire trilogy. I absolutely adore this quote. I think it's so cool. So let me read it out to you. So it is, I'm holding up my notes so I don't look like I'm looking down. So it is, humankind seemed to possess the power of gods, but in the end, the real power was wielded by time. And then it kind of goes on to say, leaving behind a mark was tougher than creating a world. Excuse me? That is so cool. I want that tattooed. No, I don't want tattoos. But if I was going to get a tattoo, that's what I would want, because that is so cool. I'm going to read it one more time for the people in the back. Humankind seemed to possess the power of gods, but in the end, the real power was wielded by time. Leaving a mark behind was tougher than creating a world. Jaw is on the floor. Audience is up clapping. I am crying. that I may be overacting, but I love that quote so much. I think that was such a good line. It was such a good line, and I want that on my forehead. I want that on my forehead. I want that on my tombstone. Like, carve that into my tombstone. Okay. I just relived that. So they are sent to kind of collect all the like Starry Night paintings and these different artifacts and kind of take them away. But then the photon hits the sun, and the entire galaxy, our galaxy, is kind of collapsing into 2 dimensions, which is basically kind of really hard to picture, or at least I found it really hard to picture. But I kind of settled with the imagery of like a giant wall, and this is like my arm is space of a giant wall kind of just hitting everything and flattening it. That's how I pictured it. I found it really hard because basically you have to picture 3 dimensions going into 2 dimensions, and everyone's getting squashed and everyone's dying, and there's like mothers holding up their kids to try and get an extra moment of breath before they all flatten, and it's really, really hard to kind of wrap your head around the imagery of that. I really struggled with that, but I kind of settled on that imagery of just a wall coming and everything that hit the wall became flat. And basically the entire galaxy becomes a picture, and it's this ticking time bomb. Earth is destroyed, and each planet in our system is slowly getting destroyed, all the way up until Pluto. And AA and Jiangxin are like, we need to go, Leoji, we need to get on the ship, and we just need to go into space and hope we find something else. But Leoji, like the champ he is, like, I've lived my 200 years, I've been through so much, I just want to die. I just want to be with my wife and child now. And he stays behind on Pluto as they escape, and there's this really sad moment where he's like cheering them on, he's trying to give them all the information they need, and then suddenly it goes quiet and he's been flattened, and they leave, and so sad. So sad. But why do my favourite characters always die? But Leoji is gone, and Jiangxin and AA head off to where else than her star and her planet. And they get there in the hopes that they'll find brain guy Tiangming there as well. Unfortunately, I kind of got a bit confused at this point, but I think they miss him. He's still with the Trisolarans. He's like part of the Trisolaran community now, and they miss him by a little bit, but he leaves them like a guy to tell them something. I got a bit confused around that bit. But they don't meet up again, I don't think. They kind of just have a kind of like somber, like, here's a message kind of situation. But the Trisolarans have gone, they've left the galaxy, they're gone to find somewhere else. And we also learn that Galaxy, the ship that had previously left and saved Earth, they have established a new humanity, and they kind of spread out humanity again into the galaxy, and there's these 4 new planets that all have secret locations because of the Dark Forest threat. They decided to keep themselves isolated from each other as well, but there's 4 planets with humans on it now, and they're all kind of thriving, and it's this whole new humanity. But they get to this specific location that they've been told to meet Tianming, the brain guy, and there's this other guy, and he's like, hey, he's kind of already gone, but I'm here. And then this is where I'm confused. So AA ends up going off, and we don't see her again. She goes off. I'm not really sure where AA went, which is kind of sad because I liked her. I'm a bit lost. If you could tell me down in the comments what happened to AA, I don't remember. But she goes off, and we end up with Jiangxin and this new guy who go into this pocket dimension, which is what Brain Guy left behind. He's like, hey, the universe is collapsing, as you know now, and I've kind of left behind this pocket dimension for you to go into, and it will kind of act as like an escape pod for this universe, and you will go into this pocket dimension, the universe will end, and then you'll come out of the pocket dimension into the new universe with all the new dimensions, which is kind of cute that he gave her life. So they go into this pocket dimension, they have a nice little life, this nice little farmhouse, some robots doing all the chores for them, but then they keep getting messages from the old universe, the one that they've just left, being like, hey guys, you've stolen mass from our universe, and you're probably making our deaths even worse. You're probably making the end of the universe even worse by stealing the mass, because there's more than one pocket dimension. So the old universe sends out a plea to these pocket dimensions, like, please just return everything you took from our universe, in the hopes that maybe it'll stop the eventual destruction. So Jiangxin kind of ruminates on this for a while, and eventually settles on, like, yeah, we should really just go out with the old universe. We shouldn't be selfish. We should combat this selfishness of the inherent right to survive. So that comes back in that discussion of like the ingrained belief that we have to survive is kind of combated with Young Sheen accepting that maybe humanity doesn't need to have a place in this new universe. Maybe we should let the new universe be a new universe, let it do its own thing rather than kind of infecting it with humanity and things from the old universe. We should just accept our fate, which so good. But yeah, so she writes all this down, and it turns out this whole trilogy was basically kind of written in retrospect by her, and it was like documenting the remembrance of Earth, hence the trilogy's name. And she leaves this on kind of like a hard drive in the pocket dimension after everything else has been taken out, and that is kind of sent like an escape pod, kind of like a time capsule for the new universe to potentially find, and they'll learn about humanity and they'll learn about the Trisolarans. Whilst she and this other guy go back to the old universe and die, and that's kind of the end of the book. That's the end of the trilogy. The universe is destroyed. The universe is gone. It's collapsed. It's finished. And the new universe is set to begin, and there's like this small seed of humanity. Now, within this trilogy, I had my predictions. I don't know if I mentioned it. I probably did in my previous recording of this, but my theory was like this gravity ship and this seed ship and the brain were all going to be like the last parts of humanity, and like some future alien civilization was going to find them and be like, oh, this must have been humanity, and that would be the end. And I'm kind of glad that wasn't, because that wasn't very good. That wouldn't have been a very satisfying ending compared to this. But yeah, that was my theory all along, that Earth was going to be destroyed, the galaxy was going to be destroyed, and there were going to only be these small parts of humanity left. And I guess I was kind of right with that, because the last part of humanity was this kind of hard drive with all the information about us on it. So whilst my theories about the brain guy and the ship were wrong, I still had the kind of general idea that there was going to be a last part of humanity. So yeah, that was the trilogy. I don't know how long this is compared to what it was before, but yeah, let's get on to the conclusion. So those were the main 5 sections of this book in my idea and my kind of dissection of this book. I hope you enjoyed this this kind of discussion of this book specifically, because I love this one, but I hope you enjoyed these ones as well. But yeah, this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I am actually, before you go, I'm going to be uploading all my scripts. I have extensive scripts, as you saw. I'm going to be uploading those all to my Goodreads, which you can find in the description, just in case you wanted a bit more in-depth analysis. Obviously, I had to cut down my thoughts for this video for the sake of time, but I'm going to put in all my notes onto Goodreads for each of these books. I'm going to kind of tweak them so they're a bit more reviewy rather than bullet points, but they'll all be on my Goodreads after this video is uploaded. So go follow me on Goodreads if you want to see more of my thoughts on this trilogy. Because I feel like it's a shame to waste them. But yeah, let's rank the books quickly as well. So I think last place is definitely Three Body Problem. Not because it was bad, just because it was kind of hard to get into. So this is third for me. Then it's really hard to pick between the two of them, but I think I'm going to put The Dark Forest in second place and The Death's End in first place. I think I had this reversed in my previous recording of this, but I think I've changed my mind. Death's End is going to be my favourite just because of all those final moments. I really enjoyed the ending. I really enjoyed the discussion of hibernation and pocket dimensions and escaping the universe and two-dimensional space. It was all brilliant, and that quote as well, God tier. I loved it. So I'm going to put this in first place, this in second place, and this in third place. So I've basically reversed the order of this trilogy. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this all the way through. I really appreciate it. Any like and comments also are highly appreciated. If you want to share the video, that would also be greatly appreciated. Please let me know your comments, your thoughts down below in the comments. I'd love to discuss this trilogy. I absolutely loved them. Maybe you didn't. Maybe did you DNF them? Did you not like them? Let me know in the comments. If you loved them, let me know. Let's discuss this trilogy. But yeah, I'm so happy. I love this. I love these books. These are some of my new favourite books. Thank you, Elizabeth, for recommending me them. But yeah, I'm going to stop rambling now. You can check more from me on Goodreads and Instagram. Both are down in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.